letter came to your door today. You opened it, read it, then threw it away. Didn't want to be reminded of what it had to say. Just as soon go lay on the floor, or beat someone senseless, or watch a cartoon, or paint all your windows to hide.
My first kind of exposure really with a creative art that I could understand, I come from Louisville, Kentucky, and in Louisville when I was growing up, there's a repertory theater there called Actors Theatre of Louisville, which had one of its high moments during my early teens and mid-teens, like one of its high moments of its history. It's still continuing, and it's had some incredible moments since then. You know, I was into books and I was into the movies, but going to this theater, Actors Theatre, and seeing play after play after play, mostly with the same group of actors, so that I could, as a kid, develop a relationship, like a fan's relationship, but it's, you know, kind of deeper than that. And then some of them I might see on the streets of Louisville, for example. And then once a year, there was a new play festival there, sponsored by the for-profit healthcare company Humana, a new play festival in March or April, I think March, where people would come from all over the world who were involved with theater and film to see a group of plays, to see maybe 15 or 20 plays that would be produced in the course of this festival. So then I would see, and that's when maybe actors of a slightly elevated stature from other scenes, New York scene mostly, would come to Louisville to perform in the plays. And these are people, you know, I would see actors that I had seen in the movies come to watch the plays, but then I would see actors who then went on to have strong and interesting careers in the movies. And even like the second film I was in was a movie called Mate One, and one of the supporting actors in it was a guy named Ken Jenkins, who I'd seen countless times on the stage in Louisville. And so he was one of my heroes. So I get to see and then ultimately talk to and ultimately be a colleague or a friend of these people who I had idolized, then worked with at that theater, and then, you know, and then continued to watch them work. And I think that was an invaluable apprenticeship, essentially, to what I ended up doing. You know, I learned, and then I was studying theater throughout my teens, and I think learning, you know, we were in that study, we were supposed to be stage managers, we were supposed to work on costumes, we were supposed to write, as well as acting, as well as potentially directing. I don't think I ever directed. But so I'm learning like these basic skills for how do you take a text, produce it so that an audience can receive it. Yeah, I think that's an advantage that I had over some of my peers who were involved with music at the time. My friends were making music and I was watching them do things, but I learned from grown-ups. I didn't know I was going to make records, but when I started to do that and got a first minuscule paycheck, I thought I can make this happen, and that means I can work on it all the time. I can do what I do any hour of the day or night, and it's valid and relevant to what I'm, you know, trying to create, which is unlike what a film actor is able to do. You know, you can work on your craft kind of, but it's all so far away from the end result. Whereas what I do, I understand I'm always in some part of the life of a song or the life of a record or the life of the transformation or evolution of my singing voice, for example. Yeah. Coming from a theater and film background, even though I was only 21, 22 when I started making songs and then making recordings, I did have a substantial background. You know, I was a union member of SAG, you know, the Screen Actors Guild. I started to make songs, and ultimately with all of my friends that I'd grown up with, who were very interesting, creative, you know, outsider musicians essentially, make arrangements and recordings, they came from like this past of bands, and I came from this past of theatrical production and film production, where you choose a text, assemble the cast and the crew to create it, make it, and then move on. And so that's how I naturally approached making records. Like each record was, well, who do we bring in to make this thing? And that just made sense to me. And I think it was confusing to some of my musician friends, because they're thinking like, no, let's, it's part of a continuum that I didn't recognize. I recognized a different kind of continuum, And I think it was also then I learned was jarring to audiences as well. I mean, it wasn't a natural concept for record buying audiences to think of a completely new approach and a new cast of performers and characters from record to record. And I didn't want to accentuate that, because it wasn't about that. It was supposed to be about the record and the group of songs and how we put them together. The process was important, but it wasn't, So ultimately, after 6 or 7 years of trying to make people understand this thing and realize that people had this natural tendency towards hearing a voice and associating work with that voice, and associating even the intention of the lyrics as coming from the voice and attributable to the singer. It's a natural thing, it's fine, but it was wrong. And in order to try to, instead of, you can't beat them, join them, I thought, like, well, I will have Bonnie Prince Billy be this voice that they recognize as an individual voice singing an intentional lyric that is self-referential. Say, okay, we can do that. It's not me, it's Bonnie Prince Billy, but we can do that. That's totally fine. And now I can make my work in peace and not, worry about all that stuff. Once I decided that there was this, disembodied entity called Bonnie Prince Billy, it was insanely liberating. Because then also, I felt I could, once I knew that it wasn't me, I felt I could sing anything. But, knowing as well that the most interesting, potentially deepest, most complex, and potentially most rewarding for myself and for the audience, the source material will come from my point of view, my perspective, my life history, which makes it personal and identifiable for me, and identifiable ultimately once I've processed it through a filter, identifiable for the audience.
Well, you're my friend, and can you see? Many times we've been out drinking, many times we've shared our thoughts.
I live, and I kind of think I always have lived, a kind of isolated existence in some ways. I found it easier to be honest as Bonnie Prince Billy, because also I had a lot of room to move, because any given time a song is sung or performance is done or a recording is made, the truths are shifting. So the honesty is shifting. So it could be, I could give an honest delivery of a constructed scenario lyric that's as true or truer than a lyric that may have a very tangible, followable thread to a life incident or something, or a living dynamic. I could maybe write something like that, but the honesty is going to be then in how it's communicated. So whether the words are fact or fiction doesn't matter as much as if the delivery is a factual and honest delivery. But it was, liberating to know that, I think the downfall of many people, if I were to consider myself a singer-songwriter, which I don't, because it's a very hazardous profession. You look at many singer-songwriters of my generation especially, and there are a great number of them who have, ended up taking their own life in a very active or a passive way. And it just seems to keep happening and keep happening. Because the perils associated with expressing something true in an honest fashion is unrealistic and unsustainable. There needs to be a dance with honesty that never denies honesty, but never embraces dishonesty, because then it would be valueless. But being able to not associate with the material as like, this is my life and I am a shadow of this material, or vice versa. It's still material. It's still text. It's still a play. It's still a script. It is not life. And the honesty comes in the present moment that could be captured on a microphone or could be captured, transiently or whatever in a live performance. It was so much easier to, like right away, the first Bonnie Prince Billy record was I See a Darkness. We did a 7-inch before that, one with the Birds and South Side of the World, but it was I See a Darkness. And I thought, okay, I was trying to figure out what am I doing? With the records before leading up to that, what am I doing? What am I doing? What am I engaged with? And with I See a Darkness, I thought, I'm going to be a singer of songs, and the songs will have verses, choruses, and bridges. I'm going to like totally embrace a traditional pop, 1950s, 1960s, Tin Pan Alley. I'm going to embrace this kind of thing, because it's only, I find that the more guidelines and rules and constrictions that are applied to us, or that are applied to me, the more freedom that I feel I have. And so then I could, I need a chorus, I need a verse, and I need a bridge. And then once you do that, then if you can apply an idea that is intensely heavy or dark, and it becomes light right away, because it's not so dark that I can't apply a structure to it. Yeah, and then it becomes more. That's when I started to think of the songs as having a potential vaccine-like quality, in that they would, enter into the system of another human being, bond with some of the more difficult things that are circulating in that, being's existence, and the body and the being would be able to build defenses around it, to recognize it and isolate it and not let it bring down and destroy that person, including this person. Yeah, that's its intention. Its intention is to have a healing potential.
That I see a darkness, and that I see a darkness, and that I see a darkness, and that I see a darkness. Did you know how much I love you? There's a hope that somehow you could save me from this darkness.
I mean, I know that I've always felt that I am involved with making current the work that is about the present, and could only be made in the time in which it was made. Like each record or is a belongs as a marker for potentially for a time, but with an idea of incorporating the past into it, and the past is an active part of it, and then the future is an active part of it as well. I don't know. There's this new record. I know it's called We Are Together Again, and I know that when the first song, They Keep Trying to Find You, was released to the world, it was when the heights and depths of certain kind of crises in the United States had reached a fairly dramatic point. That was a couple weeks ago. And I think I always feel like these records are current and topical records, but this was the first time where I felt that history was being at least kind to the record, if not to those of us suffering through what amounts to the creation of history right now. Because it felt like its function was kind of glaringly obvious right away. Like when this song came out, and there's a video with a choreographer from Louisville, Kentucky named Abby Elliott, who choreographed a very powerful and cathartic and expressive dance piece to go with this song. Very like using her art to express emotion in a kind of way that I feel is underrepresented in modern times, because people tend to, I think, stray away from emotional confrontation at a very basic level, powerful emotional confrontation at a basic level, which I think is something that individuals, especially right now, I know in the United States, people kind of need a catharsis. Like it's heavily called for, and I feel as if the lightness, the balance of light and dark in this piece of work, I think is useful right now. As well, as a potential vaccine, yeah, but even more, almost as like, physical or occupational or emotional therapy of some sort of, way. Like it's a terrain that I think if you navigate it sonically, as well as lyrically and thematically, that it has, I think it could be beneficial. I have, an immense respect for the concept of an artist to an intimidating level. So much so that I think I've spent at least 30 years trying to get to a level where I didn't even know it, I guess, because I don't think I would have it's only been in the past 2 or 3 years, I think, where I've thought like, maybe I'm an artist. And like I know as a kid, when I heard about, was learning about artists, I would think like, well, how can a person be an artist when it seems as if art is supposed to relate to our lives, right? And so if somebody is an artist, does that mean, do they have a life? And how can they relate if they're just commenting on life? And so I think part of me was also spending, most of my life trying to understand if I could get to a place where the filters, the things that I wanted to communicate would be of value.
Hey little one, you're getting bigger all the time. It won't be very long before your shadow eclipses mine. And you're a little man, but you will create the day that we never knew could be so.
And also noticing, especially with the rise of the internet and that kind of strange facsimile of connectivity, seeing the things that I would consider to be artists. Like, I don't see that in the way that I did when I was a kid, and I think partly because I'm growing up, but partly it's because it's very challenging, it seems like, for it's such a terrible decoy, distraction, the ways that it, so I don't want to, using the word purity, like for an artist's practice to be true to itself and have integrity to itself is very challenging, because the demands are that you dilute it, even just at the most basic, simplest beginning level. And I think that, that was times look dark right now, but I think the dark times might be the past 20, 25 years, and that potentially there's a potential now for a time of great constructive, I think it was a Reagan term, constructive engagement, but I don't mean it in that way. And I learned that from a Ramones song. That I think we're seeing, I have a 7-year-old, but we're seeing kids and teenagers recognize the ridiculousness of the pretense of connectivity that our generation was kind of forced to think, like, I guess we go here now, I guess we go to this thing. And that was always a distraction, and we may be terminally contaminated by that, but we can appreciate and watch as we enter the waning third of our existence, potentially. We can watch, I think, humans re-engage with humans. It won't be everybody, but it will be enough to provide some light, Yeah, I think so. Maybe it was, the American politician Ben Franklin who may have said this thing that resonated with me, which was, essentially, I don't know what I don't know, and understanding that what I know is not only absolutely subjective, but it's also nothing. Nothing at all. It's nothing. I don't know anything. And, and the fun part of, or the thing about writing lyric music is knowing that the lyrics it's a way to catch on to people's consciousnesses, because we're consumed, our heads are full of language, and we feel like we can't think things without words. That's discrediting all of the thinking that we're doing without words. But then music is this cool little, a neat human representation of consciousness, because there's this little patter of words in the middle of everything else that's going on.
That I see darkness, and that I see darkness, and that I see darkness, and that I see darkness. Did you know how much I love you? There's a hope that somehow you could save me from this darkness.
I think it is important to me in each artistic endeavor that I'm involved with to prove for a moment, to overcome the doubts, because you also don't want to, or at least owning the doubt, because being uncertain, sharing your uncertainty without claiming it is maybe not the healthiest or most inspiring thing, but owning your uncertainty, I think, is something that can attract trust. And then it's all about, feeling like that you set a standard for yourself and you want to gain the trust of somebody else, and then, because then for the rest of your life you have a job which is to maintain the trust. and that's great to have, you know? Yeah, like that job every day, yeah.
I know I see dance, I know I see dance, I know